The text message arrived at 7:47 p.m., just as I was adjusting my tie in the men's room mirror of Chez Laurent, the kind of place where a bottle of wine costs more than most people's car payments. My hands were actually shaking, not from nerves, but from pure excitement. After 18 months of negotiations, property inspections, and financial gymnastics that would make an Olympic athlete weep, I'd finally closed on the Whitmore Estate. 12,000 square feet of limestone and mahogany, sitting on 8 acres overlooking Lake Michigan. The kind of house Tara had been dreaming about since we got married 5 years ago. Stuck in traffic. Just tell me what you wanted. T. I stared at the screen, feeling something cold settle in my stomach. Tell her what I wanted? Over text? I'd reserved the best table in the restaurant, bought a bottle of Dom Pérignon that cost more than our first apartment's monthly rent, and had the mansion keys sitting in a Tiffany box like some kind of real estate engagement ring. Nothing anymore, I muttered to my reflection. Except maybe a new wife. The maitre d' looked at me with practiced sympathy when I returned to the table alone. Will Madame be joining you this evening, Mr. Hayes? Apparently not. I settled into the leather chair, watching other couples share intimate conversations over candlelight, while I sat there like some pathetic bachelor eating $100 steak by myself. My phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Tara. Instagram notification, a Tara Winslow lifestyle posted a new story. I shouldn't have looked. I knew I shouldn't have looked. But my thumb moved before my brain could stop it, and there she was, my wife of 5 years, the woman who was supposedly stuck in traffic, laughing at some trendy downtown bar with her squad. The timestamp showed 7:52 p.m., 5 minutes after she'd texted me. The location tag read, Velvet Lounge, downtown. That was 15 minutes in the opposite direction from our house. There wasn't enough traffic in the entire Midwest to explain that geography. I took a long sip of the champagne, letting the bubbles burn my throat. Around me, the restaurant hummed with quiet conversations and clinking silverware, the sound of couples who actually showed up for each other. The Dom Pérignon tasted like expensive disappointment. My phone rang. Mason. How'd she take the news about the mansion? My best friend's voice carried that particular brand of excitement that came from living vicariously through someone else's success. She didn't. She's stuck in traffic, apparently. Traffic? It's 8 o'clock on a Tuesday night. Yeah, well, according to Instagram, traffic looks a lot like Cosmos and selfies at the Velvet Lounge. The silence on the other end stretched long enough for me to cut another piece of steak. Mason had been a cop for 12 years before opening his gym. He understood the significance of lies better than most people. You want some advice? Do I have a choice? Come to the gym tomorrow, we need to talk. After I hung up, I sat there for another 20 minutes, mechanically eating food I couldn't taste while watching happy couples around me. The waiter kept refilling my champagne glass with the kind of professional discretion that suggested he'd seen this particular tragedy before. When I finally got home at 9:30, Tara was already there, lounging on our white leather sofa in yoga pants and a tank top, scrolling through her phone. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a messy bun that probably took her 20 minutes to achieve the perfect level of casual dishevelment. How was your mysterious dinner? She asked, without looking up from her screen. Lonely. She double-tapped something on Instagram. Sorry about the traffic. It was absolutely insane out there. I stood in the doorway of our living room, studying my wife. 5 years of marriage, and I was just now noticing how she never quite met my eyes when she lied. Her left hand always went to her collarbone, fingers playing with the diamond necklace I'd bought her for our anniversary. There it was. The tell. What kind of traffic? I asked. Just, construction, accidents, the usual. Her fingers found the necklace. What did you want to tell me anyway? I looked around our modest 3-bedroom house in Riverside Heights. It was nice enough, Granite countertops, hardwood floors, a two-car garage. The kind of place that said, successful small business owner, without screaming new money. But it wasn't the mansion. It wasn't the dream. Nothing important, I said. I'm going to bed. As I walked toward the stairs, I heard her phone buzz, then again, then a third time in rapid succession. The sound of someone having a much more interesting conversation than the one happening in our living room. I paused at the bottom of the staircase, listening to the soft tap-tap-tap of her fingers on the screen. Fast, excited typing, the kind of rapid-fire texting you do when someone makes your pulse quicken. In our bedroom, I sat on the edge of the bed and pulled out the Tiffany box. The mansion keys caught the light from the bedside lamp, brass and silver gleaming against the robin's egg-blue velvet. I'd imagined this moment so many times, Tara's face lighting up, her throwing her arms around my neck, maybe even crying a little from pure joy. Instead, I was sitting alone in a room that suddenly felt too small, holding keys to a house my wife would never see. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Check your email. A friend. The message came with an attachment. 3 photos, taken through what looked like a restaurant window. Tara at the Velvet Lounge, but not with her usual group of influencer friends. She was sitting across from a man in an expensive suit, leaning forward with her elbows on the table in that intimate way that suggested this wasn't their first clandestine meeting. I recognized him immediately. Derek Grant. Marketing consultant, former college acquaintance, and the kind of guy who wore cologne that cost more than most people's groceries and drove a BMW with vanity plates that read Alpha 1. In the first photo, they were talking. In the second, Tara was laughing at something he'd said, her hand reaching across the table to touch his. In the third, Derek was signing the check while Tara touched up her lipstick in a compact mirror. The timestamp on the photos showed 8:15 p.m. Right around the time I was eating my lonely steak and drinking champagne, meant for 2. I set the phone down and looked at the mansion keys again. Funny how quickly a symbol of success could turn into evidence of failure. I'd bought my wife a dream house, and she was too busy cheating on me to even pretend to care. But as I sat there in the growing darkness, something else started building alongside the hurt and betrayal, something colder and more calculating. I'd spent 15 years building a real estate business from nothing, learning to read people, to understand what they wanted and how to give it to them. I'd negotiated deals with developers who ate small investors for breakfast, survived market crashes that destroyed bigger companies, and built a reputation for being the guy who always found a way to win. Tara had no idea who she was messing with. I opened my laptop and started typing an email to my lawyer. If my wife wanted to play games, I'd make sure she understood the rules. Mason's gym occupied the ground floor of a converted warehouse in the industrial district, the kind of place where serious boxers came to train and suburban dads came to pretend they were still dangerous. The smell hit you the moment you walked in: sweat, leather, and that particular metallic scent of ambition mixed with desperation. I found Mason in his office, a glass-walled box overlooking the main floor, where a heavyweight was working the heavy bag with the methodical precision of a man who understood violence as a craft. "You look like hell," Mason said, not looking up from the invoices spread across his desk. "Thanks. That's exactly what I needed to hear. Sit down. Tell me what you found out." I dropped into the chair across from his desk and pulled out my phone, showing him the photos from the anonymous sender. Mason studied them with the same careful attention he'd once given crime scenes. "Derek Grant," he said finally. "Wasn't he the guy who tried to hit on Tara at your wedding reception?" "The same." I'd almost forgotten about that. Derek, drunk on champagne and his own perceived charm, cornering Tara by the cake table while I was talking to my mother's friends. Tara had laughed it off at the time, said he was harmless, just a guy who'd never learned when to quit. "How long you think this has been going on?" That was the question that had kept me awake all night. I'd gone through Tara's social media posts, looking for clues. Her behavior over the past few months suddenly made sense. The mysterious girls' nights that seemed to happen whenever I was out of town, the new clothes that appeared in her closet, the way she'd started working out more and paying extra attention to her appearance. 3 months, maybe 4, I said. Remember when she started that whole fitness thing? Said she wanted to get in shape for summer? And Derek's the one who runs those high-end marketing campaigns for the fitness influencers. Bingo. Mason leaned back in his chair, studying me with those cop eyes that missed nothing. So what's your play? Confront her? Divorce lawyer? Private investigator? Already contacted the lawyer. But I want more than just a divorce, Mason. I want justice. Careful, Julian. Justice and revenge aren't the same thing. Maybe not. But sometimes they rhyme. I spent the next week conducting my own investigation. It wasn't hard. Tara had gotten sloppy, confident in her deception. Credit card statements showed lunches at expensive restaurants on days when she claimed to be at the gym. Her phone bill revealed hundreds of texts to Derek's number. Her Instagram stories, when cross-referenced with Derek's location tags, painted a clear picture of 2 people who were spending a lot of time in the same places at the same time. The breakthrough came on Thursday night. Tara announced she was having dinner with her friend Jessica to discuss a potential sponsorship deal. I waited until she left, then drove to Jessica's apartment complex and parked where I could see her building. Tara's car never showed up. Instead, I followed a hunch and drove to the Riverside Hotel, a mid-tier business hotel downtown that catered to traveling salesmen and people who needed somewhere discreet to conduct affairs. Derek's BMW was parked in the back lot, tucked between a panel van and a pickup truck like he was trying to hide. I sat in my car for 2 hours, watching the hotel entrance and feeling something cold and patient settle in my chest. This wasn't the hot rage of discovery. This was something more dangerous. This was planning. At 10:30, they emerged together. Tara had changed clothes since leaving the house, trading her casual jeans and sweater for a black dress that I'd never seen before. Derek had his hand on the small of her back as they walked to their cars, the gesture casual and possessive in a way that made my jaw clench. They didn't kiss goodbye, too risky in public, but the intimacy between them was obvious in the way they stood close together, the way Tara smiled up at him before getting in her car. I followed Tara home at a distance, pulling into our driveway 5 minutes after she did. When I walked into the house, she was already in her yoga pants and tank top, hair back in that perfectly messy bun, scrolling through her phone on the sofa like she'd been there all evening. "How was dinner with Jessica?" I asked. "Good. We talked about this new supplement company that wants to sponsor some content." She didn't look up from her phone. "Jessica thinks it could be really lucrative." "That's great. What restaurant did you go to?" "Just that little Italian place on 5th Street. Nothing fancy." I nodded, filing away another lie. The Italian place on 5th Street had been closed for renovations for the past 2 weeks. There was a sign on the door that anyone who'd actually been there would have seen. "I'm going to take a shower," I said. "Okay, I'll probably be asleep when you get out. I'm exhausted." "I'll bet you are," I thought. In the bathroom, I stood under the hot water and let myself feel the full weight of what I'd discovered. My wife was cheating on me with Derek Grant, lying to my face about it, and apparently having the time of her life doing it. The woman I'd worked 16-hour days to provide for, the woman I'd bought a mansion for, was screwing another man in cheap hotel rooms and then coming home to lie on the sofa I'd paid for while planning her next deception. But as the water washed over me, I felt something unexpected. Relief. For months, I'd been wondering what was wrong with our marriage, why Tara seemed distant and distracted, why she never seemed excited about anything I did or achieved. Now I knew. It wasn't me. It wasn't us. It was her choice to betray everything we'd built together, and that meant I could stop trying to fix something that was never broken in the first place. I could stop wondering what I'd done wrong and start planning what I was going to do right. When I got out of the shower, Tara was already in bed, curled on her side with her back to my half of the mattress. Her breathing was deep and even, the sleep of someone with a clear conscience, or someone who'd gotten very good at compartmentalizing. I lay awake until 3 a.m, staring at the ceiling and thinking about the mansion keys in my nightstand drawer. Tomorrow, I would call my mother. It was time to set the first piece of the plan in motion. My mother lived in a tidy bungalow in the same neighborhood where I'd grown up, surrounded by the kind of people who'd worked factory jobs for 30 years and considered a paid-off mortgage the height of financial success. At 72, Eleanor Hayes was still sharp as a tack and twice as dangerous when someone crossed her family. "You want me to what?" she said, setting down her coffee cup with the kind of precision that suggested I'd better choose my next words carefully. "I want to sign the mansion over to you, temporarily, as a gift. Julian, that house is worth $3 million. 3.2, actually, and yes, I know what I'm asking." We were sitting in her kitchen, surrounded by the same yellow wallpaper and ceramic roosters that had been there since I was 10 years old. It felt surreal to be discussing multi-million-dollar real estate transactions in a room where the most expensive thing was probably the microwave. "This is about Tara, isn't it?" Mom had never been one to dance around difficult subjects. "She's having an affair with Derek Grant." Mom's expression didn't change, but her fingers tightened around her coffee mug. "That pretentious little weasel from your wedding?" "The same. And you want to make sure she doesn't get half the mansion in the divorce?" "I want to make sure she gets exactly what she deserves, which is nothing." Mom studied me for a long moment. "You know I've never been Tara's biggest fan." That was putting it mildly. My mother had taken one look at Tara 5 years ago and declared her all frosting, no cake. At the time, I'd thought Mom was being unfairly judgmental. Now I was beginning to think she'd been generous. "The house would legally be yours," I continued, "purchased before the marriage with my own money, then gifted to my mother. Community property laws don't apply. And what happens to me when this all blows up? You get to live in a mansion rent-free for as long as you want. I'll handle all the expenses, taxes, utilities, maintenance. Think of it as an early inheritance." Mom leaned back in her chair, and I could see the wheels turning behind her eyes. Eleanor Hayes hadn't raised a successful son by being naive about the world's complexities. "When do you want to do this?" "Today. I have the papers in my car." "And Tara doesn't know about the house at all?" "Not yet. I was going to surprise her." The irony tasted bitter in my mouth. Turns out the surprise was on me. 3 hours later, we were sitting in my lawyer's office while Margaret Chen explained the paperwork. The transfer was clean and legal, a gift from son to mother, properly documented and notarized. By 4 o'clock that afternoon, Eleanor Hayes was the proud owner of the Whitmore Estate. "Congratulations, Mrs. Hayes," Margaret said, shaking my mother's hand. "You're now one of the wealthiest women in the county." "Temporarily," Mom replied, but I caught the gleam in her eye. She was starting to enjoy this. That evening, I came home to find Tara getting ready for another girls' night. She was standing in front of our bedroom mirror, applying lipstick with the kind of care usually reserved for special occasions. "Another sponsorship meeting?" I asked. "Something like that." She turned sideways, checking her profile in the mirror. The black dress was new. I was sure of it. "Don't wait up. These things tend to run late." "I'm sure they do." After she left, I poured myself a scotch and sat in my home office, looking at the real estate contracts scattered across my desk. Tomorrow, I would file for divorce. Next week, the process servers would find Tara wherever she happened to be when they decided to deliver the papers. But tonight, I had other plans. I opened my laptop and started typing. The email went to Derek's business address, sent from an anonymous account I'd created specifically for this purpose. Derek, thought you should know that Julian Hayes has been asking questions about you around town. Might want to be more careful about where you park that BMW. A concerned friend. Then I sent a second email, this one to Tara's personal account. Tara, your husband was at the Riverside Hotel last Thursday night. He saw you. Be smart about what you do next. Someone who doesn't want to see you get hurt. I hit send on both messages and sat back to wait. In my experience, nothing made guilty people more paranoid than the suggestion that someone was watching them, and paranoid people made mistakes. My phone rang at 11:30. Mason. Please tell me you're not doing anything stupid, he said. Define stupid. Julian, I'm serious. Whatever you're planning, think it through. Revenge has a way of biting back. I'm not looking for revenge, Mason. I'm looking for justice. There's a difference. Is there? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're about to blow up your life to get back at your wife. My wife already blew up my life. I'm just returning the favor. After I hung up, I walked through the house that Tara and I had shared for 3 years. It was a nice house, not the mansion, but comfortable and well-appointed. The kind of place where a couple could build a life together if they were both committed to the same vision. But we weren't. Tara had been building a different life entirely, one that included Derek Grant and expensive hotel rooms and lies told so casually they might as well have been breathing. I stopped in the living room, looking at the framed photos on the mantel. Our wedding day, vacation trips, holiday celebrations. All of it a lie now, or at least half a lie. I'd been living in a marriage while Tara had been living in a performance. My phone buzzed. Text message from Tara. Staying at Jessica's tonight. She's having a crisis with her boyfriend. See you tomorrow. I almost laughed. Even now, even after my anonymous warnings, she was still lying, still playing the game like I was too stupid to figure out the rules. But I was done being the fool in this story. Tomorrow, everything would change. I walked upstairs to our bedroom and opened the nightstand drawer where I'd been keeping the mansion keys. They felt heavier now, weighted with possibility instead of disappointment. In the morning, I would drive out to the estate and help my mother move in. By afternoon, Tara would be served with divorce papers. By evening, the whole city would know that the lifestyle influencer with the perfect marriage was just another cheater who'd gotten caught. But that was just the beginning. I had bigger plans for Derek Grant, and for the wife who thought she was smarter than the man who'd spent 15 years learning how to outmaneuver people who underestimated him. Tara had made one crucial mistake. She'd forgotten that I was good at this. Not marriage, apparently, but business. And revenge, it turned out, was just another kind of business transaction. One where I intended to collect every penny of interest. The divorce papers were served at 2:30 p.m. on a Tuesday, right in the middle of Tara's lifestyle photo shoot at Meridian Cafe. I wasn't there to see it, but Jessica's Instagram story captured the moment perfectly. Tara's face going white as she read the papers, her carefully curated lunch spread forgotten as reality crashed into her influencer fantasy. The process server had been instructed to be as public as possible. Tara was sitting at her usual table by the window, the one with the best natural lighting for food photography, surrounded by her usual crew of wannabe influencers and social media hangers-on. The kind of people who lived for drama as long as it was happening to someone else. My phone started ringing at 2:45. Julian, what the hell is this? Tara's voice was shaky, trying to maintain composure while her world imploded in public. It's called a divorce petition. I thought you might recognize it, given how much time you've been spending with Derek's marketing expertise. The silence stretched long enough for me to hear cafe chatter in the background, the sound of her friends pretending not to listen while hanging on every word. We need to talk, she said finally. We needed to talk 3 months ago. Now we need lawyers. Julian, please, not like this. Exactly like this. You made your choice, Tara. Now live with the consequences. I hung up and immediately called my mother. "How's the new house, Mom?" "Magnificent. I'm having tea in the solarium. Did you know this place has a solarium?" "I don't even know what a solarium is, but apparently I own one now." "Enjoy it, you've earned it." "Your wife's been calling, I didn't answer." "Good. Let her wonder." That evening, I drove out to the mansion to check on Mom and to see how she was settling in. The Whitmore Estate looked even more impressive at sunset, its limestone facade glowing golden in the late afternoon light. The circular driveway could accommodate a dozen cars, and the front entrance was flanked by columns that belonged in a museum. I found my mother in the kitchen, a room larger than most people's entire apartments, unpacking groceries from paper bags that looked comically small against the marble countertops. "I bought steaks," she announced. "Figured if I'm going to live like a rich person, I might as well eat like one." "How does it feel?" "Surreal, also satisfying in a way I didn't expect." She opened the massive Sub-Zero refrigerator and began arranging items on shelves that could have stored food for a small restaurant. "I keep thinking about all the times that girl looked down her nose at our neighborhood, at this house, at the way we do things. Now she's getting divorced while I'm living in a mansion. There's poetry in that. Poetic justice. The best kind." We cooked dinner together in the kitchen that was bigger than my first apartment, and I told her about the anonymous emails, the process server, and the look on Tara's face according to Jessica's social media documentation. "What's your next move?" Mom asked. "Derek. He's the other half of this equation, and he needs to understand that actions have consequences. Be careful, Julian. Men like Derek don't go down easy. Men like Derek have never been up against someone like me." The next morning brought the first sign that my plan was working. Derek's BMW was parked outside his office building with all 4 tires slashed and homewrecker keyed into the driver's side door. The security cameras had mysteriously malfunctioned between midnight and 3 a.m., leaving no record of who might have been responsible for the vandalism. I knew because I drove by on my way to work, and because Derek called me at 9:15 a.m., his voice tight with barely controlled rage. "I know this was you, Hayes." "I have no idea what you're talking about, Derek." "But I heard about your car troubles. That's a shame. BMW repairs are expensive." "You think you're clever? You think this scares me? I think you should be more careful about where you park and who you sleep with. This is a small city, Derek. People talk." "Are you threatening me?" "I'm giving you advice. Free of charge, which is more than you deserve." I hung up and immediately called my insurance agent to make sure my own car was fully covered. If Derek wanted to play tit for tat, I needed to be prepared. But I was betting that Derek was more of a schemer than a fighter, the kind of man who preferred to destroy people with whisper campaigns and social manipulation rather than direct confrontation. I was right. The rumors started that afternoon. Phone calls from business associates asking if it was true that I was having financial difficulties. Emails from clients wondering about the stability of my company. Social media posts from Tara's friends suggesting that I was an abusive husband who'd driven my wife to seek comfort elsewhere. Derek was good at this game, but he'd made one crucial mistake. He was playing against someone who'd spent 15 years building a reputation in this city, someone who'd helped half the business community buy and sell property, someone who'd earned respect through competence rather than charm. By Thursday, the counter-narrative was in full swing. Anonymous tips to gossip bloggers about Derek's history of targeting married women, whispered conversations at the country club about his questionable business practices, a mysterious leak of his client list to his biggest competitor, along with detailed information about his pricing and strategies. Derek's wife threw him out on Friday morning. I knew because she called me personally to apologize for her husband's behavior and to ask if I needed any information for my divorce proceedings. "He's done this before," Patricia Grant told me over the phone, her voice tired but determined. "I should have left him years ago, but I kept hoping he'd change. Your situation was the wake-up call I needed." "I'm sorry you got caught up in this, Patricia." "Don't be. You did me a favor. I'm filing my own divorce papers next week. By Friday afternoon, Derek had lost his wife, his biggest client, and his office lease. Apparently, his landlord had discovered some irregularities in the rental agreement that required immediate termination. But I wasn't done yet. Derek had cost me my marriage, my trust, and 5 years of my life. A few business setbacks weren't nearly enough to balance that equation. Saturday morning, I drove to Mason's gym for our weekly workout and strategy session. I found him in the ring, working with a young heavyweight who hit the pads like he was trying to knock them into the next county. "You've been busy," Mason said when we met in his office afterward. "Just getting started." "Derek's been asking around about you, trying to find someone willing to mess with your business, maybe your property. Let him try. I've got lawyers, security systems, and insurance. Plus, Derek's not exactly in a position to hire quality help these days." "What about Tara?" That was the question I'd been avoiding. Destroying Derek was satisfying in a way that surprised me, but Tara was more complicated. She'd been my wife, my partner, the person I'd planned to spend my life with. Even knowing what she'd done, even seeing the evidence of her betrayal, some part of me still remembered the woman I'd fallen in love with. "She's been trying to call," I admitted. "You going to talk to her?" "Eventually. But not until she understands exactly how much she's lost." That understanding would come soon enough. The divorce papers included a complete financial disclosure, and Tara's lawyer would have explained by now that the mansion she'd never known about was legally beyond her reach. Her lifestyle brand was already suffering from the scandal. Sponsors didn't like controversy, and cheating wives weren't good for the aspirational image that sold products. But I had one more surprise planned for both of them. Something that would make it clear that Julian Hayes wasn't the kind of man you could betray without consequences. Something that would end this game once and for all. The charity gala was held at the Riverside Convention Center, one of those annual affairs where the city's elite gathered to write tax-deductible checks and pretend they cared about whatever cause was fashionable that year. This year, it was literacy. Ironic, considering how many of the attendees had probably never read a book that wasn't assigned in college. I'd bought a table for 10, the kind of conspicuous donation that ensured my name would be prominently displayed in the program, and that I'd be invited to say a few words during the auction portion of the evening. The kind of platform that a successful businessman might use to announce a major charitable commitment or a new business venture, or to settle some scores. Tara was there, of course. She couldn't afford not to be. Her lifestyle brand depended on being seen at the right events, and missing the social event of the season would have been professional suicide. She'd come with Jessica and 2 other influencer friends, a defensive formation designed to shield her from awkward conversations and unwanted attention. She looked beautiful, I had to admit. The kind of effortless elegance that had first caught my attention 5 years ago, wearing a midnight blue dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. But there was something brittle about her smile, a tension around her eyes that suggested the stress of the past week was taking its toll. Derek was notably absent. According to my sources, he was currently living in a studio apartment across town and driving a 10-year-old Honda Civic while his BMW sat in a repair shop, waiting for insurance adjusters to determine whether the damage was worth fixing. I spent the cocktail hour working the room, renewing old business relationships, and making new ones. The real estate market was strong, and several people were interested in discussing potential investments. It felt good to be reminded that I was successful in my own right, that I'd built something substantial that existed independently of my marriage. At 8:30, the auction began. I waded through the usual parade of vacation packages, sports memorabilia, and art pieces donated by local galleries. The auctioneer was building toward the evening's climax, a collection of high-value items that would generate the biggest donations and the most attention. When my moment came, I walked to the podium with the confidence of a man who'd spent 15 years closing deals and managing crises. The room quieted as I adjusted the microphone and looked out over the crowd of familiar faces. "Good evening, everyone. For those who don't know me, I'm Julian Hayes of Hayes Real Estate. I've been part of this community for 15 years, and I've always believed in giving back to the place that's given me so much. Polite applause. I could see Tara at her table, her face carefully neutral, probably wondering what I was planning to say. Tonight, I want to announce a major donation to the Literacy Foundation. But first, I'd like to share a little story about the importance of reading comprehension, particularly when it comes to understanding the fine print in marriage vows. The room was completely silent now. I had their full attention. You see, I recently discovered that some people struggle with certain concepts, like forsaking all others and for the long haul. Apparently, these phrases are more like suggestions than actual commitments. I could see Tara's face going pale, her friends shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Several people in the audience were pulling out their phones, sensing that they were about to witness something memorable. But I've learned that literacy isn't just about reading words. It's about understanding consequences. For example, when you sign a prenuptial agreement, it's important to understand what you're agreeing to. And when you betray someone who's spent 15 years learning how to outmaneuver people who underestimate him, well, that's a reading comprehension problem that can be very expensive to fix. The murmur that ran through the crowd was electric. I had them now, all of them hanging on every word. So tonight, in honor of my soon-to-be ex-wife and her marketing consultant boyfriend, I'm donating $1 million to the Literacy Foundation. Because clearly, some people need all the help they can get when it comes to understanding what they're reading. The applause was thunderous, partly from genuine appreciation for the donation, and partly from the kind of crowd excitement that came from witnessing a spectacular public confrontation. I raised my hand for silence. But that's not all. I'm also announcing the opening of the Eleanor Hayes Foundation for Women's Independence, housed in the Whitmore Estate, which my mother now owns. The foundation will provide resources and support for women who are rebuilding their lives after divorce, particularly those who discover that their lifestyle brands aren't as valuable as they thought. I looked directly at Tara's table. She was staring at me with an expression I'd never seen before, pure, undiluted shock mixed with the dawning realization of how completely she'd miscalculated. The mansion has 12 bedrooms, so we'll be able to help a lot of women who suddenly find themselves needing new places to live. Women who maybe spent too much time focusing on their Instagram followers and not enough time reading their legal documents. The crowd was eating it up. Nothing like a good public humiliation to spice up a charity gala. I could see phones recording, social media posts being composed in real time. By tomorrow, this would be all over the internet. Thank you all for your support, and remember, literacy matters. Especially when you're signing contracts or making promises you should probably plan to keep. I stepped away from the podium to sustained applause and immediately headed for the exit. I'd said what I came to say, and there was no point in sticking around for the aftermath. But Tara caught up with me in the parking lot. "Julian, wait!" I turned to find her hurrying across the asphalt in her high heels, her carefully composed facade finally cracking. Behind her, I could see Jessica and the other influencers hanging back by the convention center entrance, probably live streaming the confrontation for their followers. "That was cruel," she said when she reached me. "That was honest. There's a difference. You humiliated me in front of the entire city. You humiliated yourself. I just provided the venue." She was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks in dark streaks that would look terrible in photos. "I made a mistake, Julian. I know that. But this is too much." "Too much?" I felt the anger rising, the careful control I'd maintained all evening finally slipping. "You spent 3 months screwing Derek Grant in cheap hotel rooms while I worked 16-hour days to buy you a mansion. You lied to my face every single day, came home to the bed I paid for after being with another man, and you think my response is too much? I never meant for it to happen. It just did. Nothing just happens, Tara. You made choices. Every text message, Every lie, every time you chose him over me, those were decisions, and decisions have consequences. What about Derek? What did you do to him? I almost smiled. Derek's learning about consequences, too. Turns out that when you destroy someone's marriage, sometimes your own marriage gets destroyed in the process. Funny how that works. You ruined his life. Derek ruined his own life. I just made sure everyone knew about it. Tara was sobbing now, the kind of ugly crying that no amount of makeup could hide. I have nothing left, Julian. No marriage, no house, no sponsors. You took everything. I took nothing that was ever really yours. The house you never knew about belongs to my mother. The sponsors dropped you because cheating wives don't sell products. And the marriage ended the moment you decided Derek was more interesting than the man who loved you. I walked toward my car, but she followed me. Please, Julian. We can work this out. We can go to counseling, start over. I'll do anything. I stopped and turned back to her one last time. You want to know the really sad part, Tara? If you'd just shown up to that dinner 2 weeks ago, if you'd been there when I wanted to surprise you with the mansion keys, none of this would have happened. We'd be living in our dream house right now, planning our future together. I can change. I can be the wife you wanted. No, you can't, because the wife I wanted would never have needed to change in the first place. I got in my car and drove away, leaving her standing in the parking lot under the harsh glare of the security lights, while her friends documented her breakdown for social media posterity. 3 months later, Derek was working at a car dealership in the next county, trying to rebuild his life and his reputation one used Honda at a time. Tara had moved back in with her parents and was attempting to launch a new brand focused on authenticity and second chances, but her follower count had dropped by 80%, and sponsors weren't interested in yesterday's scandal. My mother was hosting garden parties at the mansion, living like the queen she'd always deserved to be. The Eleanor Hayes Foundation had helped 12 women get back on their feet after difficult divorces, and the waiting list was growing. And me? I was sitting in my home office reviewing contracts for a new development project when my phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Hayes? This is Amanda Chen. I'm a friend of your mother's. She thought you might be interested to know that I'm recently divorced and looking for a fresh start. I'm also a real estate attorney, and I understand you might be expanding your business. I looked out the window at the city I'd learned to navigate, the place where I'd built something lasting and meaningful, where I'd learned that sometimes the best revenge was simply living well and helping others do the same. I'd be happy to discuss both opportunities, I said. When would be convenient for you? Sometimes the best stories don't end with the hero riding off into the sunset. Sometimes they end with the hero building something better than what came before, something that helps other people find their own happy endings. And sometimes that's the most satisfying revenge of all.